Well, hey everybody, it's tank time. Got another tank model here to not only review, it's a sort of a page back in my lifetime. I've always been a tank model enthusiast. You've seen some other tank videos on the channel. You know that I have a predisposition towards the German tanks of World War II. I do prefer World War II. I'm not a big modern tank enthusiast. But hey, you know, I am what I am. This particular one is a Tamiya 35th scale Matilda Mark II. Now there was a Mark I, which was a rough looking thing. Wasn't really all that battle savvy. But the Matilda II was quite a tank. I've done a lot of research and learned a lot of stuff about it. We're going to set you down right here and I'm going to play with it a little bit. One of the few things I've done with this model that I don't normally do is the guy, the man. You see the scale now. Yes, he's supposed to be in the hatch, and he's, you know, leaning against the open door of the hatch, the gate of the hatch. But I just didn't, I just sealed the tank and didn't think about it, but I decided to paint the man anyway. I like the commander. He needs some wires from his headphones there, and he's got a microphone that I kind of cobbled for him. Didn't come with a mic, which is interesting. But I looked up their uniform code, and I kind of did a basic, you know, they had a khaki outfit with green socks, dusty old shoes, and did the best I could. I kind of like him leaning on it, you know, like he's out there giving commands. It'd be cool if there was maybe a wire that went inside, or, you know, and like he was talking to the guys inside, maybe, you know, about what they were firing at or whatever. But at least it gives the scale of the tank. It wasn't a big tank, was not as big as a King Tiger, which is still my favorite, but it was a formidable opponent to the German Panzer II and III, which were big desert tanks in Africa. Whoops, he's had all the drinks he needs. Let's get him out of the picture for a while. Let's look at the tank. So, anyway, this is a very formidable tank for its time. And as a child, I always liked it. I always thought it was a cool tank. And primarily, a good friend of mine, Joseph Johnson, bless his heart, he's out there carrying on in the world and still a great big enthusiast for, as he calls it, cheapity. He tends to think some of these tanks, these little tanks like this, were sort of cheap, flimsy little things compared to like the German powerhouses. But I got to correct you, Joe. I have learned a lot about this tank in building it, and it was quite the armored piece of, I wouldn't call it perfection, but this guy was out there in World War II from 1939 to 1945. The Russians used it some at the end of the war, and even later they acquired some, and it became a Russian tank. But this was one of the primary desert tanks, and you can see I've used some technique to do the sand brushing out of there. I used a color that appealed to me. This is the cover of the box, if it's not too glary there. It's kind of orange in this video. But I always liked that sort of brown color on the box cover. And I found something similar to it in U.S. Field Drab, the color called Field Drab. And Field Drab just has this look that I liked about it. And I said, well, if I use Field Drab and sand it up, dust it up, then it'll lighten it some, and that'll kind of give me the color that I want. I actually even considered going green with it. A lot of these were green tanks, like the Churchill, you see green Churchills and stuff. But every time I thought of the Matilda, I thought of a desert tank. So I couldn't get away from that. We'll look at some of the painted details here. I got let's look at got the muffler there, rusty muffler. You got the fuel tank. And yeah, this is the Big Rhino. This is the Big Rhino. I like that name. I got to looking at some of the field markings, and no, I didn't go for authenticity on that. I just mixed and matched what I liked. But if you notice on the back of the turret there's a rhino there. Well, that was one of the groups or sections. That emblem was on some of the Matilda tanks. And I like the rhino. And I said, well, let's just call this the Big Rhino. You know, like the Big Kahuna, this is the Big Rhino. Kind of enjoyed. I wasn't going to add the tarps, I guess those are, but then I kind of thought about a way to make the straps, and I made those with sliced thin plastic that I found on, of all places, a checkbook holder book. And it was thin and it had a leather texture. And I said, well, now that looks kind of cool. So I added that, and I thought it gave it a little more authenticity. I like doing something that I've learned to do recently, the chipping effect. And I'm trying not to overdo it. It's not something I ever did years ago when I was a model builder. I didn't do chipping. I may have done rough edges and some metal shining through, but I never did chipping where the paint has chipped. That's a fairly new thing for me. Oh, and by the way, I've got to admit, the number 2 there, emblem, if you can see that, the triangle I had to hand paint. The decal was so old it just fell apart. Now the number 2 made it, the digit made it, and these numbers made it. And if it was a T number, and I'm sure T6781 was not this tank. I just like, it's a number, it was intact, and I can put the decal on. So it's not historically accurate to this particular tank. But I painted the triangle. I painted Big Rhino with my paintbrush. And the decals that did work. We'll look at the emblems down here. You can see the Rhino again and a number 52. And again, I'm not sure if any of this corresponds to real numbers on real tanks. We'll just assume. But I had a lot of fun painting it, a lot of fun. There's these lights here. There were these little posts in front of it. I guess they protected the light. They kept breaking, and then I found photos of Matildas without the little posts, and I said, we're going to be a Matilda without the little posts. So, in case you're wondering, there are 2 little posts that are supposed to be in front of those. And those are some sort of lights, extra lights. I'm not sure what they were for. If anybody knows that, please post in the comments. I would like to know, because I did a lot of research and could find nothing. You got the driver's hatch there. It rolled. It sort of rolled back, and then he could peek out. He's got a viewport. You've got a machine gun here. This is a later model. It didn't have the water-cooled machine gun. It's an air-cooled. Did some detailing on the top there. You can see the hatch and the rust and dings and oil stains. I love oil stains. I've got a thing about oil stains. And then you've got these little grenade launchers. I guess they're smoke grenades or whatever. And I added in the wiring. There's wires that actually come out of this piece underneath, and there's these little triggers like guns. I guess from inside the tank you can pull the trigger, and it would move the wire, and it would fire and fire the projectile there. And then it's got little storage boxes and antenna. I'm not much for antennas on my models. That is stretch sprue. And the rest is just paint. It's just paint tricks. Dings, dents, oil stains, running areas where sand would have run. I had to pre-paint the treads. The bottom's not all that done. But pre-paint the treads and the wheels. And it doesn't roll. It's not meant for that. But I wanted the treads to look good and dusty and dirty. So let me do one other thing before we do this. This is awfully hot light I've got on above me there. Now it goes to a slightly cooler light. And when it adjusts, you can actually see more details on the bottom there. And this is maybe truer color. It just looks more like sunlight the way that other light works. Anyway, that's my little Matilda. It was a very fun project. My drunk commander who just won't stand to save his life. There he goes. And that's my Matilda project. I really enjoyed it. I want to do a Churchill and maybe a couple of other British tanks. And there's some American tanks. I want to do a Grant, a Lee, a Sherman, and a Pershing. So I want to get a couple more out of the way from my World War II collection. But this one was one of the, it had haunted me. And so, hey, a shout out to my tank crew at my Soque River Modelers group. Love you guys. I'll be showing this in person at my next meeting, which will be first Saturday. If you're in the Clarksville, Georgia area, go to the new location for Artful Barn. It's out Highway 17, I think, or 15. I don't remember. It's on the north end of Clarksville. And we have meetings first Saturday of every month, about 6:30. And we get together and they do cars and trucks. And there's a guy named Rick. Shout out to Rick for selling me this model. Thank you, Rick. He is a fellow modeler and also a bit of a guide and a mentor in the detail and what to do with the small things. I mean, the guy's a master of little details. And if you saw some of his tanks, they're just jaw-droppingly unbelievable. So I'm trying to live up to Rick. Got some other great painters in the group. Greg, Chris, whom I love dearly. They're all great guys. Riley, she's our hero. She's our steadfast, stable hero. And of course, my buddy Cole. I wouldn't be anywhere with tanks right now without Cole. Cole is, he's my backbone, my brother, and he got me back into this, starting with that Stalin Mark III that I did a year or so ago. So anyway, this is the shout out to them and Joseph Johnson, my childhood friend who loved Matildas. Here you go, Joseph, the epitome of cheapity, except it ain't so cheap. Y'all take care. We'll see you next time.